Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, HALQA-E-RUMI-O IQBAL. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. My dear brothers, sisters, and beloved children, we are going through this life cycle, and every day that we get is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many of us keep ourselves occupied in whatever we do in our professions, our businesses, our trade, and may not have much time to reflect on the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way it ought to be really studied and understood. Surah Ar-Rahman is a beautiful surah. All surahs are beautiful, but this one specifically has a certain ghanayat to it, certain rhythm to it, certain musicality to it, certain kind of a feeling that comes across when you hear this in a melodious voice, that one really wants to try to understand as to what is the message in this particular surah or chapter. I have recited just the beginning of it, but let's all reflect together onto the meanings of those words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, HALQA-E-RUMI-O-IQBAL, Allama-ul-Bayan. Four things that are best in their class are mentioned. Ar-Rahman is thus first sifati name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After his personal name, which is Allah, Ar-Rahman is the best name. So that is mentioned. Then Al-Quran, Allama al-Quran, he taught Quran. Quran is the best scripture ever, anywhere, best book that was ever delivered to humanity. So two big best things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself and his book, which is the best and the best and the best of the books. Then HALQA-E-RUMI-O-IQBAL, he created human beings. Insan is the best creation. So this is the third best thing in the universe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions right there. HALQA-E-RUMI-O-IQBAL. Right? He created stars and moon and sun and earth and heavens and all kinds of things and jinns and angels, and yet he mentioned HALQA-E-RUMI-O-IQBAL because insan is the best of his creations. So his first thing was his being himself, the best. Number two was the best book that he gave to humanity, to his creation. Number three is the best creation that he made. But the reason I picked this topic is the fourth thing, and that's Allama-ul-Bayan. And he taught the humans expression of their feelings out in a wise way. Bayan is much more than speech. If you read the translation, you would think that Allama-ul-Bayan, I taught him to speak. Speaking is not as simple as it seems in Bayan. Bayan is a very comprehensive description of what this particular faculty we all have as human beings. So we will talk about Bayan today, as to what is it that we have that no other creation has. Beautiful, beautiful faculty we have, and humans really do not totally comprehend as to what it is. Now, if we look at the literature, if we look at the people that are spirituality oriented and they have been giving their messages to us, we will learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all knowledge, and he gives that knowledge to his creation especially to human beings. And this was one reason why Adam alayhi salam was declared to be superior to the Malaika and jinns that were around when Adam alayhi salam was created. At that time they did say, they complained that we are made of fire and light and this and that, and how come a person or an individual or an entity made of dust, you are declaring him to be superior to us. And there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the term knowledge. He says, I know something about him that you don't. And to prove his superiority, he was given the knowledge of things, names of things, and angels did not know, and he was able to recite. Now, if you reflect upon that, in that little time that he created him, what school or what university did he go to get all that knowledge of the names? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the knowledge of the names, and the angels had no response to that, and they had to accept it. If we just take that into our heart, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all the knowledge. And he tells us in his book, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And I have created this universe in such a way that for every scholar there is someone that maybe who knows more than him. In other words, at any point, none of us should feel that they have enough knowledge and there is nobody else around them that does not have more knowledge than them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that clearly. And the lesson here is so that we should not really think that we know enough so that we can at any point say that we know exactly what this means. We understand what we understand today, but we may understand much more as the time passes on. हलाक बाखबर साइंस हजार सच्ची है, खुदा के इल्म के आगे ये कल की बच्ची है और हमेशा इसको तरक्की पजीर रहना है. यही सबूत है इसका अभी ये कच्ची है. I'm using science here as a metaphor for knowledge overall. That although science today thinks that science can measure this and measure that and distances between planets and moon and this and that, science is still learning. Science did not really have all the knowledge. It's evolving and it's proving itself wrong. Every time it advances, the previous theories that it had are proven wrong, and we learn more and more and more. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had all the knowledge. So we as humans should always remember that we may think we know a lot, and yet we really do not feel that we have all the knowledge that is out there on any particular subject. Now, being a physician and being interested in spirituality, I can give you one example that is fairly clear, and if I just mention that to you, you'll be able to understand that. I don't want to make this into a kind of a profound discussion, but simply to make an example. There is something called intelligence quotient, IQ. You heard about that. You say, this person has very low IQ, meaning he's not very intelligent. Somebody has high intelligence quotient, IQ. IQ was only discovered or talked about, let's say, in 1950s, about 50, 60, 70 years ago. There was references to intelligence of humans before that, but nobody called it intelligence quotient until, let's say, 1987. And then intelligence quotient later on, as people talked about it, used it, they made measures of it, and they were able to tell people as to, if you take this particular test, we can tell you how intelligent you are. Afterwards, about 10 years after that, or 15 years after that, another entity came into being. That was called emotional quotient. How you take information, how you interact with people, how you socially use the data that you have, knowledge that you have, and socialize and become interactive with other people. That's called emotional quotient. As the science further started to grow, now lately, in the last 15, 20 years, there is something called spiritual quotient. This one is combining your intelligence quotient and emotional quotient, and they're calling it spiritual quotient. And science continues to even improve on that. Spiritual quotient is for those people who basically have now learned to use their animalistic brain, in which you respond to whatever things that you are exposed to in a very quick way, versus human response that comes very slowly, measured, when you listen to whatever thing is in front of you and try to see and then respond appropriately as a human being, sometimes by not even saying anything. That's a response also. So that is, the spiritual quotient is much more than that. Now science is coming closer and closer to Islam, to really knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in us. Some time ago, Muslim scholars have told us, Rumi made, now Iqbal, in the last century, 100 years ago, basically said that to us. And that was, we believe in two parts to our body. One is the physical part, the part that came from this earth, elements of this earth, that is our physical being, our body, and the other is our spiritual body, spiritual being that is within us, that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a ruh, as a spirit, and we are supposed to understand that that is our true identity. Rumi mentioned towards it, another scholar mentioned about it, but not in this particular specific one term like Iqbal did. Iqbal called it Khudi. Khudi is your true spiritual identity that is within you. Now, let me give you one verse from Iqbal, and then this whole thing will become fairly easy. Obviously, this is a very profound subject, and I didn't want to confuse anybody, but at least make you think. इकबाल से पसंद रूह बदन की है वाह नमूद उसको कि है निहायत मोमिन खुदी की उरियानी. इसे पसंद रूह बदन की है वाह नमूद उसको. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes when you grow your spirit as well as your body together simultaneously. When you grow spiritually, grow physically also. You're strong physically, but you're also strong spiritually. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes. Why? कि है निहायत मोमिन. निहायत कहते हैं क्लाइमैक्स को. The best that person can do. मोमिन की निहायत क्या है? What is the best? What is the climax of a true believer? Momin is a true believer. Momin is somebody who has accepted the faith but then lives by it. And actually, it really exudes out of him. You can see that the person is a believer because that's the life that he has. कि है निहायत मोमिन खुदी की उरियानी. He manifests his spiritual body. Spiritual body is manifest from him. His khudi is out there for everybody to see because his behavior is the way he interacts. Let me give you the example. When you're walking there and somebody comes, you say, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Yunus, and he says nothing. Suddenly my animalistic brain will tell me, I called you salam and you didn't say that. What's the matter with you? And I'll walk away. That was my instantaneous animalistic kind of a response. But when your khudi is developed and you know you're a human being, then you say, Dr. Yunus, I said hello to you and you didn't respond. I said Assalamu alaikum and you didn't. Khariyat to hai? Are you alright? Are you feeling good? That's humanity. When you do open a little bit more, then you simply say that something must be wrong. Then you later on go on and ask his wife or his family, is everything okay with him? Are you guys okay? That is what human beings are supposed to be. So, that bayan that I'm talking about, that bayan that we all have, has all of that. Now science is calling it IQ and EQ and spiritual Q, universal spirituality, this and that, only because they do not have faith in one God, one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like Islam does. Once you believe in one God, one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you reflect within yourself, then He takes over. I used to give an example, I can still give an example. If you are on a trailer that can go only 15 miles an hour, you're on the road, and there is a truck going at 50 miles an hour. If you just hook on to that truck that is going at much higher speed than you are, suddenly your speed becomes that of the truck. So you now moving on much beyond your ability because you are hooked on to something much bigger than you. This is the message that what we learn when we really reflect within ourselves, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is within us. He is looking for excuse to help us if we only turn to Him with sincerity. And sincerity comes in believing Him. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Beginning of our Surah Al-Baqarah, very first